So today we're going to do a beginner's guide on how to get into the World of Warcraft for the first time. Now this is a video that is meant for people who have never played the World of Warcraft before, or maybe are just in general new to MMOs and don't know exactly what it's about and just kind of need to have someone show them the ropes as they get into the game for the first time. Because it's not really one of the easiest games to start out with, so it's just kind of nice to have someone tell you a little bit about what is expected of you and what does other players do that Blizzard doesn't tell you to do that is kind of expected of you. So we're going to dive into this game here, and I'm going to talk about pretty much as many things as I possibly can that I think a beginner should know about. And this is something that is going to take a little while. So I do recommend checking out the timestamps below if there's certain sections you don't want to hear about. Let's say I start talking about the classes and you just kind of think to yourself like, I'm just going to pick my own class. I don't need to hear about this. Then you can always go down and just kind of like skip forward, or you can speed up my voice, or you can slow me down if I talk too fast. There's many different things you can do to like make this video shorter or longer if you want to do that. But I'm definitely going to go in depth about many different things about this game here that you should know as you get into the game for the first time. So with that said, let's talk a bit about what an MMO is, because some people might be new to this. Basically, an MMO is a massive multiplayer online game where you go into the game and you have many other players around you. This means that there's going to be a lot of player interaction inside this game, and luckily Blizzard has made it easier nowadays, so you don't have to be very social as you play this game. You can play this game and not talk to anyone as you're doing it. Pretty much like you can just go in and just do this as a solo game, but you kind of like the vibe of having other players around you. You can very easily do that. Like you don't have to be part of guilds. You don't have to be part of a group for any sort of content. Just know that it's easier with other people, but it's not required. So if you're a solo player like I am, I do content with other people, but I prefer to do things solo if I can. Then this game very much allows you to do so. So with that said, let's talk a bit about when you get into the game for the first time, because this is a fantasy game, and behind any sort of MMO, there is a fantasy behind it, right? In this case here, this is the World of Warcraft. It's based on a real-time strategy game called the Warcraft series. There's a 1, 2, and 3 of it. It's the Warcraft 3 was my childhood game, so I'm very much into like the story and the characters. But basically, when you get into the game for the first time, I'm not entirely sure on a fresh account, but you should be booted into the character screen for the first time. I think this is where you're going to land up. If not, and even if you do land up here, this is not the place where you're supposed to be starting. Okay, once you get into the game for the first time, you're supposed to go back, which there's a back button right behind me. You can't see it because my face cam is in the way, but there's a back button, and it takes you back to this little character selection screen where you can see there's no characters right now because I actually picked a completely fresh server just so you could like kind of like not get overwhelmed by all my characters, because I have a lot of characters. But basically what you want to do here when you get into the game is you want to go into change realm at the top here. This is basically changing server. And the very first thing you want to do is pick the right server you want to play on. Now, there's many servers to pick from, and this can be very overwhelming because there's a lot of servers to pick from. But basically just the rule of thumb here, you don't want to pick something that's too low in population unless you just don't want any players around you. Of course, you can do that. But a high population server is going to have more players around you than a low population server is. So kind of decide for yourself how you want to do that. I recommend picking something that's high. Even if it says full, you can still log in. Like it's not going to kick you out, or I think it's only really going to make you like wait in line, because there's going to be like this queue. When you wait in line for something that pops up. I think that's only going to happen when a new expansion like comes out. So it's not really something you have to worry about with the population density. So just kind of like pick something that you really want to play. All the servers do have reputations for certain things. Like I don't know about all the servers, but there are particular servers. For example, Argent Dawn is known to be the best roleplay server on this game if you're playing on EU. If you're a American, then it's going to be Moonguard. Okay, and if you are a new player, they actually have new player server set up for you here just to give all the new players a common experience together. This can be nice if you're a little bit uneasy about the game and you don't want to jump into a game that has all sorts of people that's been playing this for 20 years. Like maybe you want to jump into a game where everyone else around you is just kind of like at the same level as you. Like they're also new players. So this is servers that you can pick for that. If you want to play really hardcore, then Kazakh is a very popular server. I do believe it's down here at the bottom. There we go. Kazakh is a very elite server. This is where all the elite players jump to at some point, and I try to avoid that at all costs because the Kazakh server can be very, very toxic because it's elite players, right? So it's people that are going to pick on you if you don't have like the best gear, or if you didn't enchant all your items on yourself, or if you didn't pick the right covenant or the right class or whatever, you know, the right spec for the class, then they're going to come after you. So really, you should know that. Try to stick to like the beginner friendly side of the game. At least unless you're willing to jump out into the elite world and you're just like ready to like suck all the knowledge to you, don't pick Kazakh. So as you can see, I have picked Argent Dawn, and you might be thinking, well, Daniel, why are you on a roleplay server? Are you like a roleplayer or something? Now a roleplay server and a normal server are pretty much the exact same thing. The only difference between these servers is that people like to roleplay on roleplay servers and people don't like to roleplay on normal servers. And what that basically means is that when you enter the world and you go into, let's say, a capital city or maybe one of the smaller towns around, you know, just the open world, other players are going to be role-playing as characters that live in that world. Meaning that you get more of a immersion, there's a little bit more environment, you know, it's just not dead NPCs, you know, that just do their own patrols at a loop or something. Like that's not the only immersive characters you're gonna see. So if you choose a roleplay server, there will actually be other players that pretend to be part of the world. There's going to be the exact same number of people doing dungeons, raids, PvP on both roleplay servers as there is on normal servers. Some of these might have slightly more people doing one over the other, but it's pretty much the same. Like you can, when you queue up into a server, you're not locked in with people from that particular server. So even though I play on Argent Dawn, I'm still playing with all these people down here when I do other content. So you don't have to worry too much about picking a server. It's more the open world stuff, when you just lock in and you don't do group content, you know, if you don't do a dungeon or raid or PvP or anything like that, just the open world, then who are you going to see around you? That's pretty much what you're deciding here. So for me, Argent Dawn is always going to be my main server. I will always just play an Argent Dawn. I do have a couple of characters down here. I don't actually know what those characters are. But Argent Dawn is definitely where I would go. So with that said, let's actually go and pick one of these new player servers here. Let's pick Doomhammer or Tyrallion, which is the other one. What is going to happen is that it's going to boot you into this character select screen here. Now, the character select screen is where you're going to make a couple of very important decisions because it is going to allow for you to pick a faction. You have the Alliance, which is these, you can see it's very humanoid, there's towns, it's very like medieval towns looking. But then you also have the Horde side over here, which is like barracks and deserts, and it's like these weird looking monster creatures, you know, undead, taurens, orcs, you know, that kind of thing. Very barbaric compared to the town aesthetic that the Alliance have. And it's very easy to think that, oh, okay, so these are the good guys. And then these monsters over here, they're the bad guys, right? That's not how it works. It's kind of like a morally gray area because there's some really good characters and really evil characters on both sides. And it's kind of an illusion that, you know, these look like the bad guys and these look like the good guys because it's not in any way like that. Although I do want to say most Horde members do start up trouble. So, at least if we're talking to the lore here, okay? So, you know, you can pick whatever faction you think aesthetically pleases you more. That's really the main choice here. You don't pick something based on if they're good or bad or, you know, anything like that. Pick whatever is like aesthetically the best one. what suits you personally. Any other factors like, oh, well, this race over here has a certain ratio that's like 0.2% better than this. Don't listen to players who start saying stuff like that, because they are elite players, min-maxers, we also call them. Players that think that 0.1% is a huge increase in your overall performance inside the game. Like, those are like the very toxic players. They don't necessarily act toxic, they're not jerks or anything, but they will bring you into a dark side of this game where you can't just play what you enjoy, and instead you have to play what other people tell you to play. And you don't want that. So with that said, pick an alliance or a horde member. I will go for alliance. So if you want to follow my little intro here and just kind of like get acquainted, I'm going to pick alliance side, but you're more than welcome to pick the horde side if you want to. So on the alliance side and on the horde side, you'll notice that we have characters. The outer row, or the outer column, it's called, is the base races. These are the ones you can always pick whenever you get a new account or anything like that. But you're going to notice that this column here is most likely grayed out for you because you have not unlocked these yet. Same thing goes for the horde side. The inner one, actually the outer one, I think this is called, is going to be available, and the inner one is going to be locked. And that's because these are considered to be something called allied races. Now, allied races have more exotic racial abilities, which is basically each, if you right click on these, you can actually see you get more information about racial traits, which basically means that each race can do something that the other races can't. And these just have like some exotic abilities that are, just kind of fun for certain things. And they're also variants of the other races. So for example, the Void Elf is actually a variant of the Horde Blood Elf. You have the Dark Iron Dwarf, which is another variant of the regular dwarf. So they're kind of like exotic versions of other classes or other races inside the game. They do require that you have one character level up to, I think it's at least level 50, and then you can start doing a quest to unlock these. It's just a quest that's required. It's nothing, it's not a grind or anything that's required, which is very good because it used to be a grind. So now it's much easier today than it used to be. But basically, you have these races here, and, you have humans, which is just a regular humans. You have dwarves. You have night elves, which is elves that lives in a forest. So they're very, nature oriented, balance in nature and that kind of thing. You have gnomes, which are considered to be these tinkers and very intelligent species. Then you have Draenei, which is actually a alien race that came from another planet called Argus. And these are basically goat people. They're very much in tune with the light, like paladins and priests and that kind of thing. Then you have Worgans, and you can actually see you have two different shapes that you can be as a Worgan. You can be a human, and you can also be a wolf. But do keep in mind that you're going to be in wolf form pretty much 90% of the time. Like, human form is more for like when you're just AFKing in cities. Anytime you're fighting or doing anything like that, you have to be in wolf form. So that's kind of sad. Pandaren are the pandas that came out in one of the expansions called Mr. Pandaria. This is actually something that's kind of unique because you can see both Horde and Alliance can pick Pandaren, and that's because when you do the starting zone, you have the option to do the original starting zone from back when they just came out, and then at the end of the starting zone, they allow for you to pick: do you want to be Alliance or do you want to be Horde? Because you have to make a decision there. And then you, of course, have the Void Elves. Right now, the customization option isn't actually what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be something that looks more like... let's actually pick something that I would consider to be a Void Elf. Let's do this, and then we have a Void Tentacle sticking out. Yeah, this is something that looks more like a Void Elf. They just gave us more customization options to make the Blood Elves and the Void Elves in the game look more like High Elves, which is that they have blue eye color and... blonde skin and that kind of thing. If in case you want to roleplay a high elf, it's something players have been asking for many years, and they just gave it to us not long ago. So that's why the customization option was light skinned and all that type of thing. But these are essentially blood elves. Like, blood elves are very addicted to magic essentially, and they have kind of gotten corrupted by bad magic, which is called fel magic at some point, which is why their eyes are green. Again, this customization option here is for high elf, which it has default into. But again, this would usually be like a green eye color or something like that. But then some of these decided to investigate the void, which is like the Lovecraftian old god Cthulhu fantasy, and they turned into void elves instead, which is like a totally different type of just badass elves, I think. Then you have the Lightforged Draenei, which are regular Draenei, but they have been infused with the light over many years, I think. Like this is part of like the elite Draenei that are like devoted to the light, kinda. And they can get very extremist about the light. That's like their main thing, right? Dark Iron Dwarves are dwarves that are living more underground with the lava and the magma and that kind of thing. So they have evolved into these, very burning type dwarves with fire and stuff like that. So you can see he has like a fire beard, fire eyes. So if that's something you want to do as a dwarf, then you can do that. But you do also, of course, have the regular dwarves you can choose. Then we have Kultiran, basically larger humans, to say it nicely. Basically, Kultirans are sailors that live on the Kultiran Island, which is where one of the main characters, Jaina, which is a mage that you'll actually get to know as you play the game, that's where she came from. So you can play as one of these Kultirans. And they have, just to point it out, this very awesome Druid form. You can actually see in just a second, he turns into a this weird-looking witchy creature instead of like a nature creature like this guy is. So if I take this Night Elf, you can see that he turns into a panther, which is more like in tune with the nature kind of thing. So Kultirans have like this darker fantasy about them, which I kind of think is really cool when it comes to certain classes. Then we also have gnomes, or more specifically mechagnomes. Now, mechagnomes are half robots, half gnomes. Basically, they are a normal gnome that decided to roboticize their body so they could become stronger, essentially. Like, they think that technology is much better than the human flesh, or like the flesh, so they turn themselves into robots. And then when you customize them, you can, of course, really decide how you want them to look like, how much robot should they be. It's kind of cool. So that's something you can do on the Alliance side there. On the Horde side, we have the Orcs. And the Orcs are the default thing that you consider to be a Horde character, I guess. These have green skin and they're very, about honor and, ready to fight kind of thing. Again, these are not as angry in nature as they appear when you're like picking them. Like I said, it's very like gray areas kind of thing. So you can have very good orcs, but you can also have very bad orcs, in the same sense as you can have good and bad humans. So these have green skin, and that's because when they arrived into Azeroth, which is the planet, they went through a portal and consumed fel blood. So it turned them like bad, kind of, for a short period of time. It corrupted their skin, basically, because they ingested demon blood. And that's why they have green skin. You do actually have an allied race over here, which I'll get to, that has brown skin, which is the original color of the orcs. Then we also have undead. Undead are basically humans that were resurrected by Sylvanas, which is she has become one of the main antagonists, and now she's redeemed herself or something, according to the story. Like, you'll get to see more about it as you continue. But basically, she's an undead high elf who turned others in, like corpses, into undead creatures again. And these are kind of like, emotionless, but still have like brain function. They can think just like normal humans can. And now they're just like these aggressive, they can fight. Then we have Taurens. Taurens are the most peaceful creatures of all these creatures you have on the screen here. But they do also know how to fight and stuff like that. They're very it's very much the Indian fantasy. Like, they have these Indian huts and everything like you would consider with the Native Americans. So, very peaceful people. A lot of people love playing these. Then we have the Trolls. Trolls are trolls. They live in the they at least used to live in the forest. Still many of them do, and they do voodoo and witch doctory and stuff like that. And of course you can pick to play warriors and hunters and stuff like that with them. They're very hunched over, but if you were to like look at the female, they look very different. Like that's not how the they don't look like the males, which are very, I don't know, they're just very goofy looking, the male characters, but they look very awesome if you were to, let's say, pick a warlock and really go in and mess with the customization options here. You can actually, let's do skull, wide, you know, you can really get into some really badass stuff here when it comes to these. So you can like really, you know, start looking like this badass witch doctor if you want to do that. Blood elves, we talked a bit about those. Blood elves were consumed by magic. They were very addicted to arcane magic, and then they kind of got misled by their leader, Kel'Thas Sunstrider, that led them into becoming more in tune with demon magic, which is fel magic, which is why their eyes turned green. They used to be blue, then they turned green because fel magic, and then they actually, after they decide, oh, we don't want to be corrupted by fel magic anymore, they actually redeemed themselves kinda, and now got addicted to light magic or holy magic. So now they have yellow eyes too, which is also a newer eye color for them, because, you know, now they are redeemed and they're now addicted to holy magic instead. So they're very like addicted people when it comes to magic and that kind of thing. We have goblins. Goblins are very much about greed, money, you know, gold, that kind of thing. They have like they're very intelligent. They're kind of considered to be the opposite of gnomes, which are also very intelligent. But basically, now we get to see the Death Knight here. But basically, they're tinkers. Not considered as intelligent as the gnomes, but pretty close. Like they became intelligent because they lived in a mountain that had a certain mineral that made them intelligent. Like they kind of got intelligent out of like, you know, good luck or something, or bad luck, or however you may say it. Like they ingested this crystal that made them intelligent, but now they lost their crystals, and it's still uncertain whether or not they're getting less and less intelligent as time goes because the effect is wearing off. So they kind of have that going for them. Pandorans, we talked about those. Basically, Pandorans are how do you say, like they live on this island, like a turtle that's like floating around the water, and it's like an island on top of them. They used to be slaves to the Mogul, I think they were called, and then they learned kung fu and they broke free and took back their island and society and stuff like that. So they're very martial artist focused, you know. Then we have the Nightborn, the first allied race in the Horde side. These are a newer race. Basically, they used to be night elves, but then they trapped themselves inside a magic shield for many thousands of years and became extremely addicted to arcane magic. And they are basically a magic-based society, and they're very, you know, they're Nightborn, and they're, you know, full of magic and stuff like that. You can even see the magic glow of the hands and just, you know, that kind of thing. They're very arrogant, but it's a very cool magic race. Then we have the High Mountain Tauren. This is a variation of the regular Tauren. As you can see, they have different horns. What do you say there? Like what antlers. They look more like a moose than they do of a cow, which Tauren looks like. These are basically just another version of the Tauren. I would say an even more peaceful version of them. And they get like different customization options. Then we have the Makau orcs. These are interesting because the regular orcs have green skin, and the Makau orcs, they do also have this glowing eye option where you can like really make them like, you know, bad looking. But you can also like just give them regular eyes. This is what a normal orc used to look like before they got corrupted by demon blood, and then they turn green. So basically, these are like the original orcs from their home world before they enter that portal. And it's kind of a weird thing in the game because time travel kind of comes into focus here, because during one of the expansions called Warlords of Draenor, we traveled back in time to do something or to save someone, and basically Yeah. So like one of the main antagonists travels back in time to try and change the timeline, and then we travel back to try and prevent them from doing it, right? But these are the orcs from back in time before they got corrupted, and they traveled forward in time with us to become part of the Horde. So it's kind of like time travel stuff there. Some people don't like that part because, you know, if you can just time travel, then, you know, what so if an important character dies, we can just travel back in time and rescue them, you know, kind of thing. But it is what it is. So Sandalar trolls are the original trolls back before they split out into many different sub races of trolls. This troll over here, which when you change their skin color and their eye color and stuff, is actually technically turning them into different sub races of trolls. But this is the original trolls. This is how they used to look like. You know, most people probably consider them more like this type of skin here, but this is how they used to look like, and they're very much, you know, Mayan looking with the temples and the gold and stuff like that. You know, that kind of culture. And just looks really cool. I think this is a really cool looking troll. And then we have the Vulpera. The Vulpera are a funny little weird race that we got acquainted with in the deserts when we traveled to another zone during BFA, Battle for Azeroth, the expansion. And they're just kind of like these funny little furries that people love playing. Like they look awesome in their running animations, and they're goofy and they're silly. So, you know, a really fun race to play if you want to play something that's a little bit more furry than other races. But that's basically all the races that we have here. And of course, you can change back back and forth between male and female. Now, you did see me click the customization button here to like allow for you to customize them. Before you do that, we need to talk about classes. Now, classes in the game are very different, and my recommendation is pick a class first, then pick a race, because not all races can play all classes. As you can see here, the Vulpera can't be Paladin, but if I take my mouse cursor and hover on top of the Paladin tab, you can see which races are highlighted to become Paladins. I do also want to just mention before we get started here, you can make a class trial, and if you do that, then it'll allow for you to play one of these classes and just kind of like try them out to see how they feel like. If they feel something like you really want to play, then sure, go for it. But the trial class is going to allow you to play one of these classes at, I think, level 50, so you have most of your spells for a short period of time. Just enough for you to like test it out. And then you can go back and choose one for level 1 if you want to, once you've figured something out. Now, the classes are very different from one another, and we need to talk about something called roles and specs, or specializations. We say specs for short. Basically, you have different roles inside the game. You can be a damage dealer, both melee and ranged. Those are technically two different types of roles. And then you have healing and tanking. Now, as a damage dealer, this is what you should start with. Don't start out in the game as a healer or tank. You can, if you want to, but if you want a good experience with the game, I don't recommend going as a healer or a tank. There are just certain things that are riding on your shoulders and expected of you when you queue as a healer or a tank. And if you're new at the game, people can be very mean if you don't know what you're doing. There's certain, like, there's levels to learning the game. First, you need to learn what exactly is dungeons and how is the routine inside a dungeon. What does the people need to do? What does the tank do? What does the healer do? What should the DPS do? Oh, okay, so the DPS should not stand in fire, or the DPS should not pull enemies that the tank hasn't pulled, for example. Like, there's just certain things you need to learn about dungeon running before you start doing healing or tanking, because those are a little bit more complicated roles to play inside these other dungeons and raids and kind of thing. But basically you have these roles, and each class have a specialization, or a certain number of specializations, I should say, which basically means that if you, for example, want to play warrior, then you don't just play warrior and you have one set of spells. No, you have multiple specializations within the classes, which basically means that you can customize how you want to play the class. So you have different playstyles essentially within the class that you can specialize into. So if you want to play a warrior, let's just go ahead and take these one at a time. I should mention also, each specialization belongs to one of these roles I just mentioned. So some of these classes can be a healer and others can't. So you really gotta think about, what do you want to do at some point? Do you want to try out healing once you get a little bit more acquainted with the game? Then probably you should pick a class that has a healing specialization, if that makes sense. So with that, warrior is basically the, okay, I should probably mention this too. All the classes have different armor types. So warrior, Paladin, Death Knight uses plate gear, which is the strongest gears, which means you take less damage. Hunter and Shaman, and now soon enough we're going to have the Dragthier, which is coming out in the next expansion. They are going to be mail armor, which is a mix between leather and iron. And then we have leather users, which is the Rogue, the Druid, the Monk, and the Demon Hunter. They use leather. And then of course we have the cloth wearers, which is the Mage, Priest, Warlock, and that's pretty much it. So, in that order, they take more and more damage, basically. So Warrior is one of the tanky ones. Warrior has 3 specializations, 1 tank specialization, and 2 damage specializations, which means you have 2 different damage playstyles. Just to give an example, because I'm not going to go through all the specializations with all the classes, you can just kind of test them out on yourself, for example, by doing a class trial. Basically, Warrior can choose to be a more slow and methodical damage specialization, where each attack has a certain bonus to it. So for example, it ignores armor, or the target takes less healing. For example, if you're fighting a paladin that can heal himself constantly, then if you hit them with that attack as a warrior, then they're going to heal themselves less, basically. So arms warrior, as we call it, is a specialization where it's more slow and methodical. It's more tactic oriented. But then you can also play as a Fury Warrior, which is like 2 two-handed weapons, which is a big selling point for Warrior. Basically, you just go crazy and berserk, and you just deal as much damage as you can. Your attacks don't have as many bonus effects as Arms Warrior, but it's just basically focused on attack, attack, attack until the target is dead, and then go to the next one. So it's very Fury-based, and people love playing it because of the 2 big two-handed weapons. It's a big selling point. It's the only class in the game that can have 2 two-handed weapons on them at all times. And as a bonus, one of the reasons people pick Warrior is that it can farm pretty much any weapon transmog in the game, meaning you can farm staves, you can farm polearms, 2-handed swords, 1-handed swords, maces, axes, daggers, all these things, fist weapons. So if you're one of those type of people who wants to collect appearances in the game, like weapon appearances, that kind of thing, Warrior is a very good class for that. Warriors are known to not have barely any self-healing, and it's kind of a thing people say that you need to have a healer with you to babysit you as you're playing a warrior, because that's how a warrior is. It requires a healer babysitting you. That's not entirely true though. It is something people say, but warriors have a lot of damage mitigation and armor-based spells that you can use to ignore pain, and so you don't take half the damage that you're supposed to be taking. So even though they have lesser self-healing than other classes, you have a lot of damage mitigation. And a warrior is very intimidating to play against if you play, player versus player combat, if they have good gear. So don't listen to people who say that it's required that you have a healer with you, because it's not. You can play any class in here in any kind of content. That's really like one of the main points here. The next one we're going to talk about is going to be the Hunter. Again, not going to talk about every specialization here because it's going to be a very long video. But just really quickly, Hunter is a pet-based class, meaning that you have a pet that fights with you, and the pet is going to be kind of working as a semi-tank. You can't go into a dungeon and queue up as a tank or anything like that because you have a pet with you. But it kind of works in the way that it focuses the attention of the enemies to make sure that you can just stand at the back and attack. This makes the Hunter a very popular starting class for a lot of people who are a little bit intimidated by getting attacked by enemies. So the Hunter is very good for like solo gameplay, basically. You can solo enemies that other people can't because they're playing another class. Some pets in the game, if you play as a Beastmaster specialization, allow for you to tame a pet, which is a exotic pet type that can actually heal you every 30 seconds. So again, as a hunter, you can have a semi-healer and a semi-tank mixed into your damage specialization. Hunter have 3 specializations. All 3 are going to be damage focused. 1 is melee and 2 is ranged, basically. So that's something you can do as a hunter. I don't think there is anything else to mention that's that important. I could say that depending on the pet you have tamed, because you can tame any sort of pet in the open world, or at least most of them, which kind of like adds another layer to the hunter, because now you have this Pokemon aspect to it, where you can go out and you can track down certain rare pets that can become your companion, and they have like unique pet abilities that can change some of your spells in combat. So let's say I tame one pet that has a damage reduction effect on both of you, and Bloodlust, which is a very important spell in certain scenarios because it buffs everyone that is in your group. Or you can tame another pet that is very good for player versus player combat. So this one can, slow enemies and reduce the healing they take or something like that. So like, depending on the pet you tame, it's going to have a different effect, which is just a very cool aspect of the hunter. Next one, Mage is the magic caster, or at least the typical mage fantasy that you have. 3 specializations, all damage focused, and these are focused on Fire Mage, Arcane Mage, and Frost Mage. So all ranged and all different, magic fantasies, so to speak. Mage is a very popular class in the game. It is considered to be very good for player versus player combat especially. It's also very fun in PvE, which is player versus environment, such as dungeons and raids. And basically, Mage is just like, it's a very agile class. You move very fast around the place. You have a lot of shields that you use to like try and just like defend yourself, but you don't have a lot of like self-healing and stuff like that. But you're more like trying to prevent damage by kiting, like running away or teleporting and stuff like that. You do also have the ability to make portals, which means that you can, if anyone is in your group, you can make a portal that teleports everyone in the party to a certain town or something like that. So you can teleport everyone to certain locations. You do also have the ability to create food that people they can eat out of combat, of course, so that when they're not fighting, they can eat that to heal themselves up or gain more mana, which is very important when you have a healer in your group that keeps using mana to keep everyone alive. So that's a very popular class to play for some people. Rogue is a stealth class. Basically, you're going in stealth and you're assassinating people. This is the ultimate stealth class fantasy. So if you want to do player versus player combat especially, Rogue is considered to be the best class in the game when it comes to player versus player combat. Rogue is kind of like the melee best PvP class. If you had to ask most people, they would say that. And then Mage would be the best caster PvP class if you ask most people. At least if you play it very well. It's a very good class to play in PvP. Rogue has 3 specializations, 3 damage. So far we're not really seeing a lot of like healing and tanking, but 3 damage. And basically this allows for you to choose a different playstyle based on what kind of assassination playstyle you want to play as. So rogues, I don't think there's anything unique to tell about them. Like it is the rogue fantasy. There's a lot of stealth abilities. You can even stealth your entire party for a certain amount of seconds, so you can like skip past certain mobs inside a dungeon, which is very popular to do. So people love having a rogue with them inside dungeons. Then we also have priest. Priest is a priest, but not the priest that you think it is. Basically, priest in the game is not the same thing as priest in other games, where like it's very religious and there's like a god that's like granting them this power or something like that, which I personally think is a good thing. I'm not very religious myself, so I love the fact that priest is actually a different type of priest in this game here. Basically, using holy magic is not about believing in a god. It's about willpower. If you do whatever you think you're doing is the right thing to do, and you believe strongly that this is like the right thing, then you can gain access to this kind of magic. That's what the fantasy is, at least. Some of the cultures, of course, like the humans, do believe it's a religious thing. You can see we have like a church in the background here. They do actually make it a religious thing, like a divine right or something, but it's not. They're just like kind of like they believe the wrong thing, kind of. Draenei see it as science. This is a scientific type of magic, just like any other magic in the game. And they actually have kind of more like the right view of what exactly it is. It is just magic like anything else, but it's just accessed through other means, you know, like any other magic is. So yeah, you can definitely play a priest, and it's going to be like this fantasy of you healing party members. You know, you stand at the back and then you heal people. Priest is a very unique class because it has 3 specializations. It has 2 healing specializations and 1 damage specialization. And Priest is a very complex class to describe because Priest uses holy magic to heal in the holy specialization. It's the typical priest that you would think of when you think of a priest. However, the 2 other specializations are very different. Shadow Priest, which is the damage dealing specialization, is the complete opposite of a priest. You're technically not playing a priest if you play as a Shadow Priest, in like a fantasy sense. Basically, we talked about Void Elves over here being like this old god Cthulhu, Lovecraftian type fantasy. A priest, if you play as a Shadow Priest, is the incarnate of that. Basically, you turn into this purple looking thing that's totally corrupted, and all your magic spells are not, you know, like holy magic focused. They're all shadow magic focused, and it basically you're like this insanity damage dealer, and it's just super cool. It's like if you take the priest fantasy, like over here, this is like the good, you know, holy magic. Shadow Priest is on the other end of the spectrum, which is very odd to have them in the same class. Like technically Shadow Priest should be a separate class in itself because it's not the same thing as a Holy Priest. But they decided to combine it. So if you choose to play as a priest, you have this very dark fantasy side of priest, and then you have this very light fantasy side, okay? And then you have discipline priests, the other healing specialization, and that's actually somewhere in between. I have to sneeze. Now, discipline priest is technically a mixture between the 2. So you use a mixture between holy magic and shadow magic. And what you basically do is that you buff up your team members with shields, or you heal them 1 time, and then they get a buff, and then you need to attack enemies, and the damage you deal to enemies is going to heal your party members. So it's a very aggressive and high damage output healing spec in the game. And personally, it's the most fun healing spec in the game. It's also the more challenging one, especially for newer players who has never really done any sort of healing. You know, it's very different playstyle than all the other healing classes in the game, because the other healing classes are just kind of like stand back and heal. You know, you have healing spells, heal them up if they need health. Discipline is very aggressive and it's very different in its playstyle, but it's super fun once you get to learn it. So if you want to heal at some point, the priest has a very awesome fantasy for that. I don't think I have anything else to say about priest. I've been yammering on about priest for a long time now, but it's a very complex class to like discuss. Warlock is the mirror opposite of mage. Basically, you know, like how I said, mages are very agile, and you know, they can run all over the place, teleport and stuff like that, and they have portals they can create that teleports people away from them. They can create food that heals people outside of combat. Warlocks does everything the opposite. Basically, this is a dark mage that uses fel magic and shadow magic, just like the priest does, in order to deal damage. It's a very destructive kind of magic, whereas arcane, like mages, are more about like using the magic correctly to deal the most damage. Warlocks are just kind of like, you know what, I'm just gonna throw so much magic at the person that he dies, kind of thing. It's very destructive. Warlocks, they are very tanky. They have extra armor, and they are very much like a sitting turret. They are very dangerous as long as they can hit you, but they can't really move around that much in most cases. So they're very stationary type classes. Warlock can also teleport people, but not away from them. Instead, you can teleport people to you. So if you have another person in your party with you, they can help you teleport others to you. I think you require 2 other people. It's a spell that's very popular in raids or dungeons, because you can basically go into a dungeon or raid, and if the other players like on the other end of the map, you can just teleport them to you. So that's a very popular thing when it comes to PvE type content, because you can teleport people to you. You do also have the ability to heal other people, not through food that you eat outside of combat, but through health stones that you can use during combat. So every 1 minute, you can use one of the health stones from the Warlock. You have 3 charges that you give people, and then you have 3 of them, on a 1 minute cooldown they can use. So it's a very popular class to have with you as kind of like an assisting type class that helps out the team by providing extra healing and stuff like that. They can create, smaller portals that teleport people in a short distance from like 1 to A to B, for example. So it's a very popular class in like a team-based sense. Warlocks have 3 specializations, all damage specializations, and they each focus on different things. One is affliction magic, which is basically just shadow magic, kind of like the shadow priest. Then you have destruction, which is a mixture between shadow magic and fel magic, which is very destructive. Fel is like shadow magic is like insanity, like corrupt people's minds, and then fel magic is like basically burning fire. It's very destructive. It's the green magic that you see on screen here, and the purple one is the shadow magic. And then you have Demonology Warlock, which is basically about summoning demons to do the fighting for you, and that's very fel magic focused. So it's very much like the specs are about balancing the different types of magic. What kind of magic user do you want to be? With that said, let's talk about Paladin. Paladin is the first class in the game that can heal, tank, and DPS. They have 3 specializations that all do different things. And Paladin is kind of like a... if you don't want to die in the game, play a Paladin, because they don't die in the game. They have so many spells to heal themselves or shield themselves, and a lot of utility to shield and heal other party members. So if you go into a dungeon as a Paladin, it is very fun to play, because there's so much you can do to not just attack enemies, but to assist your healer or assist your tank. Like there's just each Paladin spec is kind of like, it's primarily that spec. So if I play as a damage dealing Paladin, I'm primarily a damage dealing Paladin, but I can also tank if I want to, but I can also heal if I want to. Same thing goes with the healing spec. I'm primarily a healer and I need to keep people alive, but if I need to, I can also tank, and I also deal a lot of damage, because Paladin healing is kind of like Discipline Priest. Like you need to attack to reduce the cooldowns of your healing spells so you can heal faster. So you have to attack and heal at the same time. So it's a very unique but fun type of gameplay style. This is my favorite, my second favorite healer in the game. And then as a tank, you also deal a lot of damage, and you have healing spells to heal your team. So, like I said, it's kind of like a hybrid class. Like all the specs just kind of like each other's job a little bit, which is very fun. Paladin is also the same fantasy as Priest, except that Priest are more about like, wanting to heal. Whereas Paladin is more about, I want to be a warrior, but I also want to have healing magic, and I want to like protect the innocent and stuff like that. It's more of a pure warrior class that can also do holy magic. So they're primarily warriors, but they can also do healing, basically. Druids. Now, Druid is very unique because you can see very few classes can play Druids. My personal favorite, like I said, is the Culturan Druids, because they have this darker, witchy fantasy with the undead creatures that you can turn into. But the very popular choice is to play Night Elf when you play a Druid. Night Elves have the best racial for a Druid, but like I said, don't pick something based on racial or how they look or something, but pick what you like to look at. Basically, a Druid is a shapeshifter. Depending on which role you want to play, which, by the way, you have 4 specializations as a Druid, as the only class in the game. You can do ranged DPS, melee DPS, tanking, or healing. And each of these specializations will have you turn into a different animal. So one of the complaints that I see a lot of people say, if they want to play Druid, but they don't want to turn into animals, is that, oh, why do I have to turn into animals? I can't see my armor, because they want to look at their character, right? The only specialization that you play as a Druid where you don't turn into animals is healing specialization. The 2 damage specializations have you turn into a feral if you're melee, or a chicken if you're ranged. or you turn into a bear if you're tanking. So, you know, if you don't like looking at animals, then maybe this is not for you. But it's a very popular, I think it's the most popular class to play in the game because so many play druids. I should mention that these animal forms can be changed and swapped, so you don't have to look like this one if you do melee damage. You can unlock more animal forms as you play the game through achievements or questing or stuff like that. And it's a very fun grind to like try and unlock these unique animal forms. Like I just unlocked a corrupted PvP skin, for example, by getting a certain honor level on my account. So now I can use this corrupted tiger that I can use in combat. So, you know, depending on whether or not you like animals, you may or may not like this class here. As you can probably tell, this is a very nature-focused class. This is nature magic they use, and they're very much about healing. So no matter which druid spec you play, you're kind of like expected to be a little bit of a semi assisting type role. So, you know, you need to help with healing, dispelling, different things. Like they do kind of like each specialization does kind of the same thing as other classes in the game. For example, Balanced Druid does kind of the same thing as a Mage does, but you don't have as much of an aggressive damage dealing playstyle as Mage. So you're at the same time kind of expected to be assisting a little bit with healing and utility and things like that. You also have the melee damage dealer, which is actually a stealth specialization. So if you play as a tiger, you know, with the tiger specialization, which is called Feral Druid, then you're kind of playing like a rogue. Like it's the same play style, except that rogue has a more aggressive high damage output, but you do have more healing utility and stuff like that as a druid. So if you like to play a rogue, but you want to have more self-healing and you want to be able to solo content on your own, then Feral Druid is a very good specialization to play. I love playing Feral Druid. It's a very fun specialization. You can still do high damage. I'm not saying you like rogue is the one for damage, and this one you have to heal. But it is kind of like a unspoken rule that as a druid, no matter which specialization, you kind of like have these utilities that you're supposed to be using to help the team out, rooting or slowing people or stuff like that. You know, that's kind of like part of your rotation, like crowd control based things. So with that, let's talk about Shaman. Shaman is a class that focuses on using the elementals as part of your fantasy. So basically the elementals, which are these like, you know, earth and fire, wind, water creatures that gives you power because you're in harmony with them. So you can like use lightning and stuff like that, water to heal people. It's a very cool kind of like a I would say this is the mirror class to Druid. Some people say it's the mirror class to Paladin, but I don't really think it is. I think it's more like the mirror class to Druid because of the you can turn into a ghost wolf form that allows you to run fast, just like you can turn into a feral form with a Druid. So like there's just certain utility there that's very similar to Druids. Basically, as a Shaman, you have 3 specializations: healing, ranged damage dealing, and melee damage dealing. Shaman is probably one of the most fun classes, I would say, to play as a damage dealer in the class. It is very visually awesome. There's a lot of elemental spells flying around the place. It's very aggressive. It has a lot of utility. It's just a very fun class to play. I should mention also that I'm saying this is a mirror class to Druid, but instead of getting a tank specialization, you're actually getting this earth elemental that you can summon. I think it's on a 4-minute cooldown, I'm not entirely sure. Basically, if people are struggling, let's say the tank is about to die, or he is dead, you can summon this earth elemental, and then it tanks for you, basically. So the tank has a chance to like be brought back to life, or maybe you just have a few mobs left, and that tank can like kind of do the job until you kill those last mobs. So it's a very cool spell to have. I should also mention that a lot of people use this spell incorrectly. The Earth Elemental is supposed to be if you're about to die, like the group is about to wipe, then use it. I see a lot of Shaman players that just pulls out the Earth Elemental as soon as it's off cooldown for extra damage. Don't do that. It's not considered to be used that way. and it will actually mess up the tank because it's going to steal the attention away from the tank. You don't want to do that, okay? Now, the monk is the next one we're going to talk about. Monks are the Kung Fu Shaolin fantasy. It came with the Pandarans in the Mr. Pandari expansion, so this is the first new class that was added into the game, and it has 3 specializations. I would actually call this one the mirror class to Paladin. So it has a healing, a damage dealing, and a tank specialization. The damage specialization is a very good brawler class specialization to play. It's very good in 1v1 combat because it has so much utility that you can use. It's not a very tanky class to play. It's very squishy, but it has a lot of utility to make up for that. Basically, it's about fighting aggressively and smart, and it's just a very fun class to play when you do PvP combat, which is player versus player. It's also fun in PvE, but especially in PvP, it's a very feared class to play against because it's just very good for brawling type content. The tank specialization is also very unique because it's the Brewmaster specialization, it's called. And basically, the tank specialization works very differently than any other tank in the game. Because you have something called stagger, which is a new mechanic that no other class has. Basically, when you take damage, you only take some of the damage instantly. Whereas other classes would, even as tanks, would take the damage, like all the damage instantly. You take some of it instantly, and the rest of it gets damaged over time. It's kind of like this Brewmaster, I'm drinking, alcohol so I don't feel it immediately kind of fantasy. It's kind of a weird, fun fantasy. But basically, this one allows you to take damage over time, which lets your healer heal the damage before it actually gets taken. So if you have a raid boss, which is a very big boss that deals a lot of damage, where you have like 40 people fighting that one enemy, let's say it's attacking you, and it's a raid wipe, or at least if it hits you, it kills you type attack. Then monks can actually survive those type of attacks that other tanks in the game can't, because they have this unique stagger ability, which is just very awesome to play as. It's also a very fun tank to play as in the game. So yeah, Shaolin Fantasy if you want to do that. The next 2 we're going to talk about are hero classes. Now, as I said, there's an expansion coming out that adds another class to the game, which is called the Dracthyr. They are also considered a hero class specialization, and because it's not out yet, I can't really talk too much about it. But basically, these other hero classes are considered in the lore to be elite classes. So they're stronger than the other classes in the game. They're not actually stronger than the other classes. Like if you fight against other classes, they're not actually stronger from a gameplay point of view. But lore-wise, they're these elite, type classes like warriors and stuff like that. So basically, Demon Hunter, you can only play as 2 different races. You can play as a Blood Elf or a Night Elf. Basically, Demon Hunters are elves that has decided to fight against the Legion, which is like the demons and stuff like that. But they want to do it using fire against fire. So they're consuming demon blood and demon magic to fight demons. So they're becoming what they want to destroy demons, kinda. They're very fast and agile, and it's a very popular class to play because it can actually glide, so you can like jump off high places and glide down, because you have wings and stuff like that. You can't see the wings, but they do pop out once you use abilities. Now, Demon Hunter is also a class that has 2 specializations, as the only class in the game that only has 2 specializations, a damage dealing and a tank specialization. And it's just kind of like, it's just a very fast and furious, and they use spell magic, to fight enemies, and they're very, very fast and very popular for PvP combat. So yeah, this is a very, very unique class to be playing. Now, you do also have the ability when you customize these Demon Hunters to get like demonic appearances. So you can actually see if I go into the skins here, I can really become demonic if I want to do that. I can also, if I go to utility, take off my blindfold, you can see I have fell eyes, stuff like that. So yeah, you can just really do some really awesome stuff here. The next one I'm going to talk about is Death Knight. Death Knight is one of my personal favorites. Death Knights are basically undead people. Like there's a main antagonist in the game called the Lich King, and he has resurrected warriors from the dead, or at least killed people and then resurrected them. He's a very evil guy, and he resurrected them as Death Knights. So you use death magic and essentially kill people. It's the kind of fantasy where these Death Knights have this urge to kill, and they need it satisfied, kinda. Now, this is kind of like old lore, so I think I can spoil this, but essentially you break free from the Lich King's grasp, and now you want to do good things as a Death Knight, but you still have this urge to kill, so you kind of have to like turn that urge towards bad people. So you're trying to like make the world a better place by cleansing the world from undeath, ghouls and stuff like that, to help the world, to kind of like use your satisfy the urge to kill. I have a dog walking around, by the way. So Death Knights are very cool to play. Death Knights have 3 specializations, 2 damage and 1 tank. So one of them is Frost Death Knight, which is the fantasy of undeath, coldness, that kind of thing. Then you have Unholy Death Knight, which is basically the class's necromancer. You summon people from the dead to like help you out as minions, and then you fight people. And then you have the tank specialization, which is Blood Death Knight. So you leech blood from your enemies to heal yourself, kinda. So that's kind of what you have going on here. So that's a short explanation of all the classes in the game. I did mention this, but when it comes to choosing a a healer, damage dealer, or tank when you want to play the game, it is, like I said, my recommendation that you go as a damage dealer, level up the first character, and then once you have understood the base game, then you can go back and level a new character as a healer or a tank. I don't recommend leveling up to max level. Then you have an understanding of the game, and then you queue up as a tank and then go into a max level dungeon to try it out, because people can be very mean, like I said. So start over again with a new character and just kind of like learn how to tank, learn how to heal. Being a healer is considered to be the most difficult playstyle of all the roles. It has the most difficult playstyle, but being a tank is something that requires more prep work. Like, you need to understand the dungeon beforehand. What is the best route to take? Which enemies should we pull and which ones should we just ignore? Because you as the tank decides who do we fight inside this dungeon here. So if you take routes that are not optimal, other players will let you know, because that's just the kind of game this is. Other players can be toxic sometimes. If you want to go as a healer, focus on keeping people alive and learn how to play the healer. If you want to go as a tank, know that it's an easier role when it comes to the gameplay aspect, but it requires knowledge beforehand going into the dungeon. That's why I recommend going as a damage dealer. My dogs are going crazy right now. So with this, Besson wants to say hi. Let's go ahead and talk a bit about creating an actual character. So I don't recommend picking a Demon Hunter or Death Knight as your first thing, because it's kind of like when you get into the game for the first time, there is a tutorial starting zone, and the base classes will actually take you into that zone and walk you through it, and it teaches you how to play the game as a new player. So picking anything from warrior to monk is my recommendation to do. So let's go and pick, let's say, a paladin, and say I don't want to do a class trial because I actually want to create a character now. So I say continue. You can name your character something. I'm just going to write something random, and then it actually tells me if that name is available. Luckily, it was actually available, so I can pick that. And then I can go ahead and customize my character in like these many different ways. I'm just going to keep it as is. And once you're ready, after you spend 3 hours customizing a character to make sure it looks right, click next. And then you get this option here. For some reason, it recommends me to choose this one. Don't do that. Always pick the left one. Depending on your race, this one is going to be different. Basically, this is the new tutorial island that Blizzard just made to teach you how to play the game properly. This one is the old, before we got this, starting zone for the particular race that you picked. Don't pick that one, because it doesn't teach you properly how to play the game. So this one over here, you should always pick, then you click finish, and then you get booted into the game. Let me just go ahead and do that so you can see, oh, now we actually have our character. I'm just gonna either double click it or say I want to enter world. And then it starts you out on this tutorial island. Now, I need to talk about how to set up your character once you get into the game. I will have a bunch of add-ons that pops up on my screen. Add-ons is something we'll talk about too. But basically, I need to like reset everything so it looks exactly like yours once we get into this game. There's some settings that you should have turned on once you get into the game. Like it's the first thing you're going to do every single time you create a new character. You can always go back and watch this again if you create a second character in case you forgot. Like I said, there's timestamps below. But basically, you want to make sure the UI is set up properly. So I'm just going to skip this because I want you to actually see it. All this stuff here you won't be seeing because it's add-ons. Like I said, I'm just going to go in, disable all my add-ons so it looks just like yours because I don't want to confuse you. This is what you're going to see. So it's going to give you a tutorial. You're just going to follow it. But once you've done that, I want you to go in here by clicking escape on your keyboard. Right now I can't see the menu that I'm supposed to be, accessing, so I guess they disabled that in the beginning here. But you can click escape, and then you enter your menu. Inside interface, there's a couple of things you need to do. Auto loot allow for you to, when you right click on a dead body, to loot everything that dead body has. I recommend ticking it on. If you just want to open up his bag and check out what he has in his bag and pick out specific items, you can hold down shift and then right click, and then it's just going to open up the bag and you can pick out whatever. If you toggle this off, the default is going to be just opening the bag and checking it out. And then if you hold shift, it's going to loot everything. I recommend just auto looting as a default, so you swap it around. You can actually see it says loot key if you want to check out specific loot. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to go into display, and inside display you can see that we have something called tutorials. If this is your 30th time creating a new character, you can turn this off if you don't want to see tutorials. I'm just going to keep it on for now. I would probably recommend ticking it off after you're done with the tutorial island here. Just tick it off once you're done. What you can also do is you can go into action bars, and in here you can actually see that we can toggle on these action bars. Are you okay? Oh, so he's just sitting there. Basically, I can't drag my spells. As you can see, I have a couple of spells down here, but I can't drag them. If I hold down shift, then I can drag it, and I can move it around. And you can see we have nothing. We just have this one bar down here. That's probably not enough when you're playing this game because you're going to have a lot of spells and items and stuff you want to use. So toggle the bottom and the right bar and the right bar number 2. And you can also stack them in another way if you want to do that. But just have these bars enabled so that now we have all these bars over here on the right side. And we also have the top bar here. So that gives us a little bit more space. You can also toggle here. So you can see if you can toggle up and down to allow for you to have more bars. So I have 1 and 2. At some point, you're probably going to install an add-on. Actually, in the next expansion, they're going to change this, because the UI is going to look way different. Like, it's going to allow for you to do things that add-ons do for me today, but it's going to be built into the game. So next expansion, things are going to change drastically when it comes to the UI. The minimap is going to look different, so don't freak out about that. The nameplates up here are going to look different. For now, this is how it looks like, okay? But there's like 5-6 months till the next expansion, so we might as well talk about this. So toggle these on, go to names, and you have something called personal resource display. Let me just show you what that is. If I attack something, let me just move my spell down. If I attack something with my spell, then you can see this little bar at the bottom here. Basically, this tells me how much health, how much mana, and how much unique holy power to this particular class I'm playing I have. So I know how many resources I have as I'm fighting. Now, some people like to have this. I like to turn it off. Really depends on you. You can turn it off here by saying you don't want personal resource display. And that's pretty much all you have to do. Next thing is you're going to go down to raid profiles. Whenever you start doing any sort of content with a group, as a default, it's going to show you this type of nameplate that you have up here. You can see I have this nameplate up here in the top left corner. This is a very ugly looking... This is a very... my dog. This is a very ugly looking nameplate. You should have something where it actually... What was that? There's a window thing popping up. It should show you like this little square box with the color of the class that you're playing with, because each class have a class color. Paladins are pink, hunters are green, Warlocks are purple. You know, they have different class colors. So what you want to do is you want to make sure display class colors is turned on, display power bars is turned on, and then display health text is set to health percentage, so you can see how much of a percent health do they have. And then you can increase the size of it. I like to have it somewhere around here in height and somewhere around here in width, just so that it's a little bit bigger. And then I want you to toggle on use raid style party frames. This is the important one, because this one allows you to not see your party members with this kind of nameplate, because it's not really optimal, but instead see them as these squares. That's much more accurate in telling you information about that particular player to see if they're dying or not. So if you, especially as a tank or healer at some point, want to be doing stuff to heal your party or something like that, raid style party frames is much better than the default ones. So toggle this on, okay? That's all you need to do in here. Of course, there's system settings where you can go in and change your, you know, depending on what kind of computer you have. So you can always do that. But that's pretty much it. Now, we do have something called add-ons. I have a bunch of add-ons installed, as you can see, and I will leave a link for a description inside my video description. I'll give you links to certain add-ons that I think are very good to use as a first-time player. So you can just kind of like decide if you want to install that add-on or not. Add-ons require, well, it doesn't require, but it's recommended that you install a program on your computer called CurseForge, which is one of the programs you can use, which basically updates your add-ons for you. So just install CurseForge, tell it where your game is installed, and then you can just go in there and search for add-ons, and it's very easy and convenient. I'll go ahead and leave the names and links for the add-ons that I use, but I would recommend installing add-ons through CurseForge, and then you can always just mess around. Basically, add-ons allow for you to change the way the game looks. You can have an add-on that literally tells you around the player that you have, so around my character here, what spells are right now not on cooldown, because when I use spells, if I go over here and just like keep using this, you can see, oh, now it's on cooldown and I'm waiting, I can't use it again. So it actually tells you up here if it's on cooldown or not. So that's kind of a neat little thing. There's also some add-ons that tells you basically if you're inside a raid fight, all the boss mechanics, it tells you what to do. If a boss is about to throw a certain attack, it like on the screen tells you, oh, run away from it, or stand inside the circle or something. Like there's many different useful add-ons. Some people don't like using add-ons because it's cheating. Other people like to use them because everyone else uses them. Basically, you're handicapping yourself if you're not using add-ons. That's how people see it. You can play the game without add-ons, but it also helps you immensely if you use add-ons. So with that said, let's actually go ahead and I'm just going to let you go through this starting zone. Do your thing. Enjoy the story just at your own pace. Once you're done with the starting zone, it's going to kick you into the main capital city or whatever faction you chose to play as. Something just happened on the screen there. And once you're there, get back to this video because I will show you around inside the main capital city. So I'm just going to log out and then I'll meet you right there. Okay, so now you're back again. You just did the introduction, and now you're in Stormwind or Orgrimmar, depending on which faction you chose. Now, do keep in mind that if you're on the Horde side, it's going to look pretty much like the things that I tell you, you can find in Orgrimmar as well. You can just go up to a guard. Let me actually just see if I can find one. There's one right here. If there's anything you're confused about on the Horde side as I'm doing this part, you can always talk to a guard and he can tell you where things are. So if I'm talking about the bank inside Stormwind, which is the main city here, then you can always find the bank inside Orgrimmar by talking to one of these. And it'll actually, if I go and pick this one, let's do the Trade District Bank. Then on the map, which you can access by clicking M on the keyboard, he actually tells you it's right over there. You know, just kind of like using the red flag. So at any point, you can just kind of like talk to a guard that has the little the icon, you know, with the scroll. Not all guards have that icon, but most of them do. So if you find a guard and he doesn't tell you, you know, doesn't let you do it, like this guy over here doesn't let me, just make sure you find one that has that icon. So this is where you start. You can actually see this guy. He just finished the tutorial island, so he's like right here. When you enter the world for the first time, you might be a little bit confused about where to go next in order to quests. And I will get to that. To begin with here, I'm just going to show you around the town, and then I'll show you what to do once you need to start questing and level up and get your character to max level. It's very important for me to point out, when you play this game, and I can't stress this enough, the game is going to be boring until you reach max level. Yes, I said that. The game, when you're low level and you're trying to get to max level, is a tutorial. All that part from level 1, and currently the max level is 60, the next expansion is going to be 70. Getting to max level is a tutorial. Don't judge the game based on what you're going to be doing until you reach max level. Okay, people told me that. I didn't quite believe them, and I quit the game multiple times and then returned to it like in like periods. Basically, look at this game as all the fun stuff gets unlocked once you reach max level. All of a sudden, all kinds of crazy stuff unlocks for you. Don't judge the game based on below max level things that you're doing. Okay, because it will not be that exciting. Push yourself to max level. Who knows, maybe you're going to have a lot of fun questing to max level. I know some players don't enjoy questing, but get to max level, then see what gets unlocked, try it out, and then judge the game, okay? Because it's very important to point out, the fun starts at max level. It sounds crazy, I know, but that's how the game works. That's how any MMO works, okay? Get to max level first. With that said, what we're going to do is I'm going to take you through the city. As you can see, I created a new character. This is a mechanome, which means that he's half robot, half... it kind of looks like Homelander a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount up. Now, you don't have mounts yet, probably, because you just started out. But basically, this allows me to go a little bit faster. Some people can fly, as you can see. I haven't unlocked flying yet on this character because I'm still level 10, which is the same level you are once you enter the city. But basically, when I go into the city here, you're going to notice there's many shops around. And what you can find is one of these. This is a Hero's Call board. It might be called something else if you're the Horde. Basically, this tells you a new thing you can start out if you want to do that. Don't use this one. It's not going to be something that does anything good for you. If you're in battle, not Battle for Azeroth, if you're right now playing Shadowlands, maybe this is also still going to count for Dragthyr when the Dragonflight expansion comes out. You notice this guard here that has an exclamation mark on top of him? That means he has a quest for you. He is the guy you want to talk to get started questing. Okay, he gives you this quest called Tides of War, and that one is going to be the introduction quest for what you should be doing as a new player. Okay, some people miss this guy. My dog is shaking the camper. Yes, I'm sitting in a camper right now. But basically, this is the guy you want to start with, okay? But just accept the quest for now, and then just leave it. We'll get to it, okay? A couple of things you want to know is that inside the town, we have a auction house. There's two of these. There's one right here in the trade district, and there's one over here inside the Dwarven district. Now you're going to notice that I just put a pin on the map and I can actually click on it. My dog has went to the vet and he has sore ears, so he's shaking himself, so that's fine. Now, over here, as you can see, I made this pin that I can select and deselect, and on the minimap up here, it actually says, oh, map pin is that direction, because I just selected it. That basically leads me to like places I can go. So I can mark things for party members to tell them where things are. He's really itchy, like right now it's his chest that's itching. But basically you can tell people to go certain places. If you hold down control, then you can click and put it. And then if you just click it normally, then you can toggle it and untoggle it so you can like see the direction you need to go in the minimap. Of course, again, I have add-ons. I didn't disable them this time around, so you can see my map looks different from yours. My spell bar looks different from yours. It looks very different. I have this thing, which is a damage meter, so I can see how much damage people are dealing. This is a roleplay add-on, so I have many different add-ons that you don't have. Don't worry too much about that, okay? You can even see my nameplate looks a lot prettier than yours, probably. Like I said, I have them linked in the description, the names for them. I'll just link the most simple ones, so you don't have like these really complicated add-ons that is just going to overwhelm you. But just like the base ones, like getting a cooler looking map. Once the next expansion comes out, you won't need that because they have a really cool looking map coming out. But like the nameplate and stuff, I'll leave links for that in the description. But this is the auction house. Now, an auction house is a place where you can talk to one of these. Ignore this. This is an add-on. This is what you're going to be seeing. And this is going to be a place where you can buy and sell items. So anytime you pick up something, you can see I have a bag here. And the item does not say soulbound. So right now you can see this leather chest piece here actually says soulbound. So it says Nimblefinger Jerkin, item level 16, soulbound. Soulbound items means that it's locked to your character. You can't trade this, you can't send it by mail, it's locked to you. So anything that's not locked to you, you can actually place inside the auction house. You just right click it if it's sellable, and then it gets popped in. It gets put in here inside this slot, and then you can tell it, what do you want to sell it for? It will just automatically default it to what the current sell price is for that item. How long do you want it to be on the auction house? And then you can sell it. You can also say people should be able to bid on it if they want to do that. So you can do different things here. Then you can also buy things. You can search for weapons. You can search for armor, glyphs, trade goods, battle pets, mounts, stuff like that. You can find all kinds of things in here. My one recommendation is don't buy gear while you're leveling because it's higher item level. It's very quickly going to get replaced by just a questing gear. So don't buy gear unless it's because you want it for transmog. Now, transmog is a new word you haven't heard before. Basically, when I collect an appearance, let's say I just picked up this sword here in the open world, it will get added to my transmogs, which means that I can go into my collections down here, and then you can see we have different tabs. We have mounts, pet journal, toy box, heirlooms, appearances, and then I have an add-on that gives me something called rivals. Don't worry about that one. Mounts is all the mounts I can collect in game. So I can I have this mount that I can ride on. I have this mount I can ride on, like a fox mount. You can collect these through many different ways, by killing things, and then it has like a 1% drop chance, or doing a quest that gives you the mount or something. You can actually kind of see what you need to do to get these mounts. If I scroll down to ones I don't have, this guy says, oh, this one is collected in Korthi and the Maw through an achievement called Breaking the Chains. This is very non-descriptive. It doesn't really tell you exactly what you need to do. Like, it doesn't say, go here, do that to get this mount. We use websites for that. Specifically, we use a website called Wowhead, and it can be very confusing to navigate at the beginning. But just know that this is what we do. You get very quickly used to it, and it becomes much easier to look up things. Wowhead, again, I'll leave a link for that in the description. Just know that this is where we go to look up things. So I'll, search for Hand of Salaranga inside the search tab inside Wowhead, and then it'll pop up as a mount. I'll click it, and then it says, oh, okay, go do this to get the mount. Much more descriptive than what is being said in here. But you also have a pet journal. This is kind of like Pokemon. You can collect pets. I do actually think if I go to a certain place, I'll just continue over here. You can actually go and collect pets, which is just like small critters that you find inside the open world. And you can do pet battles with them, just like Pokemon, but you only have 3 pets on your team at one time. So you can do that, and you can actually summon them. So I, for example, have this fire dog that I named after my dog. I can summon it, and then you can see, oh, it's right there. And it's following me around because it's a very loyal little dog that I have. I do also have the Spectral Tiger Cub. This is probably one of the most rare pets you can get in game. Yes, I am flexing a little bit here. But basically, this was given to me by a friend because I helped him pass his exam at his university. But basically, you can do stuff with pets. I was kind of expecting one. Oh, here we go. I can click this pet because you can see it has this green icon, and I can fight it. And I can actually, I don't know what this is, but I can actually fight it, and then I can strong trap it, so I can capture it, and it's part of my my pet collection. But let's just go and exit this. So basically, you can capture pets, and that's kind of a cool thing to collect as well and decide, which is just, some people love doing that. Let's go back into collections. We do also have a toy box. Toy box allow for you to do really fun random stuff. I can use, for example, this one to make myself look like a ghost. I can do fire sticks to place a fire pit on the ground, and there's probably a lightning. There we go. I can summon a mailbox that I can just access, so I can check my mail at any point. There's many different toys you can collect in the game that either does something really useful or are just kind of like a fun gag thing. So that's something to collect too. Again, it's an MMO. There's lots of things you can just sort of collect. What I can also do is I can go to appearances. This is the fun one, because this is the one where you can collect armor types. I can change my armor, how I want to look like. These are all things I've collected in the game and has been saved to my account. So all my characters in the game can get this armor if they have that armor type. So all my leather characters can be using this armor here. So basically I collected all these things. I also have a bunch that I haven't collected. As you can see, they're grayed out with this little gray outline. So I haven't collected all of these yet. And this is kind of like a fun little in-game thing. You collect things so you can like customize your character. I spend a lot of time customizing mine because that's just like a personal favorite thing to do. So essentially, transmogging is a fun thing to do. You can click on something to try things on in this little window here. I do believe the reason mine is a really big window is because I'm using an add-on. Again, anytime you see something that's different on my screen is because I'm using an add-on, okay? You can also link outfits for others to see. So if I access my chat, which is actually a very good moment to talk about the chat, I can actually right-click on my chat window, which you probably have down the bottom left corner, unlock it, and that allows for you to move it around and change the size of it, depending on how much I want to see. There's different windows. You can customize these in many different ways. Just for now, just keep it at general tab. But basically, when you want to do things inside the game, if I want to just say something in the open world, let's say I want to link my outfit. If I click enter on my keyboard or just click inside the chat window, I can write something. There's some commands that you need to know. /S, not capitalized S, just regular S, space, and then it'll allow for me to just say something. So I just say something. It's a little chat window. You didn't quite see it there because it didn't get caught in time. But basically, I can go into the chat window, link my outfit, post in chat, and then you can see I can actually link it, and other players can click it and see it on their character. Another thing you need to know is if you're inside a dungeon group, then you can do /I or a raid group and then space, and then you can see I'm writing to my instance group. This means any sort of like content that is a instance content, like a dungeon, a raid, PvP, that type of thing, where you're just in a little area with other players where you're doing a certain activity, then this is going to write to everyone in your group. So I can write something and everyone is going to see it. It's not going to appear as a chat bubble, but you can also do something called /P, which only talks to your party. So if you're in a party where you just invited random players into your group in the open world, and you can see them over here on the right, on the left side, then this allows for you to talk to your party members, and that will actually get seen as a chat bubble. Now, right now I'm not in a party, so if I try to say anything, it's not gonna allow me because it says you aren't in a party. But basically, it's gonna pop up like a chat bubble like this, and the party members can see it. Do keep in mind, as soon as you're more than 5 people, it's no longer a party, it becomes a raid group, and then you need to use /I for everyone to see it. You can still do /P, but only 5 people inside the entire raid group can see your messages. So that's something to note. You can also do emotes, /dance. So you can see I'm doing this little, let me just right-click my effect up here so it disappears. You can see I'm doing the robot dance because I'm a mechanome. I can also do roar. I can do cheer, woohoo! You know, he's very goofy because he's a mechanome. So you can do many different things. You can do /dance. You can do /roar. You can do / they just removed /spit because it was a toxic emote, Blizzard said, because people were spitting at other players. I think it was kind of silly they removed it. But you can do many different things with emotes. There's always somewhere online we can look things up to see those things. So with that, you can also go to writing trainers. There's one right here, allow for you to write. I think this is like the first thing you need to do when you enter this city for the first time, because as a default, you can't write a mount. So you need to go to her, learn the first one. It's very cheap, and then it'll allow for you to write a mount. You can always buy mounts by not one of these people, I believe, but if you go to... in Stormwind, there's a flight master right there. You kind of have to go inside this little tower and then go in, and then there's a person in there selling horses or griffins. They're selling griffins that you can then use. So there you can buy your first mount. It's very cheap. Very cheap. You will need to grind a little bit of gold, but then you can buy it. Let's talk a bit about the different tabs you have down here. You have the character info, shows you your character, your gear, what item level you are. Once you get to max level 60 in this case here, this little number here is what you want to increase. The better your gear is, the higher this number is going to be. And people will require you to have a certain item level to enter certain content. You can also see your reputations with the different factions. If you go into reputation down here, once you start earning gold and currency and stuff, you can see that currency down here in the third tab. Right now I can't see anything because I don't have anything. If I go in, you can see I have I do have gold. Other types of currency you can see in here. You do also have titles you can change on your characters. So he gets this little title on top of him that other players can see. So if you want to be called Crows the Stylist, I can choose this one, for example. The next window we're going to talk about is going to be the specialization and talents. This is a very important window. This is down in your little mini menu. Essentially, this is where you can pick what specialization you want to be. So like I talked about at the class section of this video here, you can choose different specializations within that class. And as you can see, if I were to pick, for example, assassination, activate it. You can only do this outside of combat, by the way. Then my spells are going to change. Well, it's not going to change right now because this is a low-level character. We don't have that many unique spells yet. But this is going to change your layout. So if I were to... this is a new spell. I'll put that in there, for example. If I were to go ahead and swap out of my assassination back to outlaw, you can see that it saves my spell layout. So right now, this spell is not available in outlaw, for example. So it swaps back again. So this is how you change specializations and change into what you want to play inside the game. You can also, just to mention it, inside the collections, we talked about pets and stuff. You can also drag these down to your action bar. So you can just click them if you want to do that. Same thing for toys. You can drag them down as well. So you have easy access to them. The other thing I want to talk about is talents. Now, again, this is going to change drastically once Dragonflight comes out because they're really overhauling the UI totally. But inside your specialization and talents, once you reach level 15, then you unlock talents, which is another tab down here at the bottom. Essentially gives you 3 columns, at least before Dragonflight comes out, where you can choose each row, depending on your level, a new talent, which is a passive ability or a spell that you can actually use. You're not going to see this yet. Like I said, level 15 is going to unlock for you. But then just kind of choose what you think looks really cool. Again, in the end, if you want to be really good at the game, then there's guides online that tells you what to pick to optimize your damage. So the next one is achievements. This is another thing that people like to just grind inside the game, like an in-game thing to do. Right now I have only 15,225 achievement points. You're going to have a lot less than me because you're a new player. But basically there's achievements within all these different tabs here. So if there's achievements for player versus player combat, dungeons and raids, professions, reputation, stuff like that. And basically, you can unlock things, and you will just automatically get some of these as you play the game. Doing questing and completing content and stuff like that. But this is something that some people like to do. You can also search for achievements up here if you want to do that. We do also have the quest log that you can click down here. This is basically just a map. So if you click the map, you can see that I'm opening up the map here. The little button in the bottom right corner here allows you to see a quest on the side, so you can choose which one to follow. So let's say let's actually pick up a quest. Let's find a quest here. There should be one somewhere. But you can go in here and you can choose which one you want to have. Oh, this one. I can choose this one instead. And you'll see my minimap actually changes the arrow because I am right now focusing on a different quest. I can also just choose them in here. So depending on what I want to track and follow, I can do that in here. Now, we do also have Group Finder. This is something you learned about when you did the tutorial islands. You can go in here and queue up for a dungeon or specific things. If you want to queue up for dungeons and raids, this is the first tab you want to enter. There's Dungeon Finder that just boots you into a random dungeon with random players. Once you actually unlock the ability to do a random dungeon, choose that one over specific dungeon because it gives more experience. I don't know why, but it does. You can also do Raid Finder once you hit max level. which is just booting into a raid with a random number of people. Then you have pre-made groups. This is the one where you want to make your own custom groups for certain things. This is like the serious tab. This is for people doing serious content. This is more like for fun, you know, or leveling or stuff like that. Player versus player combat, I can queue into battlegrounds or arenas. I think you do need to be level 20 to do arenas. But battlegrounds you can queue as early as you want. Then you have quick match, which is casual PvP. Rated PvP, which is like for hardcore players. You know, I want to increase my rating and unlock special gear and stuff like that. Again, this is a max level thing. And then you have pre-made groups for people who want to do pre-made PvP, where they want to find their own people and they don't just want to, you know, queue up for random stuff. So you can do that. Honor level over here is something that unlocks as you do more PvP, and it just gives you rewards as you go on. And yeah, the last thing I want to show is the adventure guide. This one basically just tells you suggested content, which you shouldn't listen to because this is just useless. It doesn't really do much. I mean, if you're completely stuck, then maybe you can go in here and see what to do. Dungeons is going to give you information about all the dungeons from many of the expansions that you've played. So the current latest expansion is Shadowlands currently. So I can click that one, and then I can check out the dungeons here. So if I want to check out Sanguine Depths, I can go in here and see which bosses are there. What loot do they drop? What are the mechanics? So I can see abilities of this particular boss. This is, by the way, something that the tank should be doing, because this is, you know, like to read up on strategy and stuff. The model of the boss to see how it looks like, different things. You can do the same thing for raids. So I can go into raids, check out things, depending on the expansion, see what bosses are there, so on. And then we have the loot tab. Depending on the expansion and what powers you collect, you know, legendaries and stuff like that, this is going to tell you what legendaries you unlock for your character and stuff like that. So probably more like end game stuff. So don't worry about this for now. Other than that, there's also the bank. The bank is another important destination in the game. There is one in the Dwarven district. Let's actually mount up this a little bit faster. Basically, you can just go into the bank and store items so you don't carry them in your bag with you at all times, because I only have like this many spaces in my bag. It's not very much. So I can go into, let's say, the bank and drop these items in, because, you know, why carry them with me kind of thing. There's also something else called transmogrifying. Now, right here in the map where I put the pin is a transmogrifier. This is a guide that allows you to take your armor. Let's say I just acquired this chest piece here and I equip it because it's much better. I don't really like how it looks like. So what I can do is I can actually transmogrify. Now, I have a mount that can do this. This is a very expensive mount that you can buy inside the Mr. Pandora expansion that allow for me to transmogrify on the go. You, who don't have this mount, will have to go to the pin and talk to a guide that can transmog for you. Okay, so basically I can click on this and then change how I want my chess piece to look like. It's the same chess piece, but the appearance changes. And this is why people like to gather, you know, different appearances, because you can change into like cool things. So let's say I want this one here. I can then apply, and now this is how my chess piece looks like. Okay, so transmogrifying is a endgame type content that people love doing. I'm just going to equip my old gear because that's better. And the last thing we need to talk about when it comes to like this place here is, first of all, the Mage quarter. I will actually, let's go ahead and do chromie time first, because I'll show the Mage quarter with a max level character because it's just easier. Let's go down here. Now, it's very important to point out that specifically here in Stormwinds, if you want to go down to this hourglass, which is the next thing that's very important for you to know about, because that's going to allow for you to swap expansion that you level in. Let's say you don't want to do this expansion here, which is Battle for Azeroth, which is the beginning experience for new players. Let's say you want to do classic content, you know, just do the first dungeons and the first quests and stuff that were introduced into the game. Then you can swap expansion that you level in by using chromie time. This is a new feature. It's very awesome. It makes so that the older expansions are right now not obsolete, because you can now actually quest in them. But there is kind of like a little trick to getting there. Like, you don't want to go... You see this wall here? Yeah, don't try and go this way through the wall. You can't. You have to go through the Dwarven district and then go up north. Otherwise, you can't get to it. So as you can see here, I actually have a question mark I can talk to here, but this is the way you want to go, because there's this little bridge that you can go under. This wall here is going to block the entire road. You can't get here unless you're flying. So going this way, we have the embassy in the back here, and then we have chromie time. Again, in Orgrimmar, there's an hourglass, just like there is on my map here. And basically, you can talk to her. She says, do you want to select the timeline? Okay, so I do that. And now I can choose an expansion. My recommendation, do the Iron Horde intro quest line and the Legion intro quest line before doing anything else. Because it's going to give you an item that is very useful and is much harder for you to figure out how to get as a new player once you hit max level. Or at least level 50. Like, you can't do this anymore then. Basically, just choose one of them. Let's say I want to do the Iron Horde. So select, I'm now in this expansion. I can do the intro quest line that it pops up with. So it kind of like leads me to where I need to go. Just like when we talked to the guard at the beginning, by the mission board. But basically, I'm going to get an item by doing those 2 expansions that is similar to this one. This is called the Hearthstone. And this is going to allow for you to teleport to certain locations. So if I go and speak to an innkeeper in a certain city, when I click this one, it's going to allow for me to teleport to that inn. So I don't have to travel by foot to places. It gives me 2 of these stones, one for each of those expansions I just mentioned, and allow for you to teleport to those expansions. It's a very awesome shortcut to get there. And like I said, once you hit level 50, it's going to be much more difficult to get those stones because you have to figure out how to get to those expansions. I know how to do it, but for a new player, it can be difficult. You have to look up things and stuff like that. But once you've done that, just select whatever expansion you want to do. If you want to fight the Lich King, then do that because he's a very awesome antagonist. But let's say you want to go back to current timeline because there's kind of a issue with this chromie time thing. If I'm playing with a friend who's in my group, and I am currently inside Warlock of Draenor, which is the Iron Horde timeline down here, and he is in the Cataclysm. You can't see each other outside the main city. You're just going to disappear into other instances, so he just fades out. Make sure you're in the same chromie time, or if you're playing with a max level player, who's your buddy who is already max level, he can't see you in any of these, because these are time travel modes. What you're going to have to do is talk to her and say, I'd like to return to my present timeline. If you do this, then you can see a max level player friend who is playing with you, because this is the normal, like everyone else timeline. Okay? You can only select that if you're inside a certain timeline, so make sure you know how to do that. So that's what you want to do as you're leveling. This is the woman you want to talk to. She's the main quest giver that gets you started on your journey to whatever expansion you want to start leveling in. The last thing I want to show you is the Mage Tower. Let me log into another character to show you this. Okay, so now I'm inside my max level Death Knight, and what I want to show you is how to get to all the different expansions if you just want to get to an expansion, because this is a very important thing to know about. Inside Stormwind, there is this thing called the Mage Tower place, or the Wizard Sanctum, which is inside the Mage Quarter. It's kind of like this little symbol here with the arrow, and you can find that in Orgrimmar as well. Basically, this tower here allows for me to travel to many different expansions. So if I go in here, and go to the top, go through this portal, and then I can see many different portals in here that allow for me to travel to different expansions. So I have, this is Wrath of the Lich King, Mr. Pandaria, I have like BFA, which is over here, Warlock of Draenor, Legion, and then the newest expansion, which is Shadowlands, and then I think this is going to be Dragonflight once that comes out. So going in here allows you to travel to different expansions. I think you may need to be a certain level to use some of these. Or if you're in chromie time, then if you're inside the Mr. Pandaria chromie time expansion leveling process, then you can probably like click the Mr. Pandaria one. So this is a very important place to know about as well. And like I said, there's a horde equivalent to that. We can go in, there's like portals and stuff. But this is like the last thing I think I wanted to talk about. Like I don't have anything else to show you. So this is the intro, how to get started playing the World of Warcraft with all my tips and tricks. The last thing I do want to say is dungeons can be terrifying for some people to go into. there's nothing wrong with entering a dungeon. Let's say I go into my my group finder and I say I want to choose a dungeon, and then I pick a random dungeon, and then I choose what role do I want to play. Because I'm new, I might want to pick DPS. When you go inside a dungeon, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, this is my first dungeon. Please let me know if I'm doing something wrong, because people are very friendly if you from the start tell them you're new. But if you just kind of like pretend that you know what you're doing, then people will expect that you know what you're doing. So there's nothing wrong with just like letting people know you're new as a player. Dungeons can be very intimidating, and through time it just becomes kind of a meh kind of thing. So it's only really at the beginning you're gonna, of course it's other players, so of course it's gonna be terrifying. But just kind of like, just try it out. You will have bad experiences. Let me just say from the start, you will have bad experiences, but you're also going to have a lot of good experiences. There will just be a random player that's just an asshole from time to time. Just ignore them. They're not worth your time. Just either leave the dungeon group if they're just being complete assholes, or if everyone else in the group agrees they're assholes, then you can kick them from the group or something. So, just try it out and let people know you're new, and you'll be fine. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this little guide on how to get started on the World of Warcraft, and I really hope you're going to have a good time inside this game, because it's a very fun game once you get into it, and just kind of like enjoy yourself. So with that said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.